Hey, what's up? It's your boy Bobby Sapphire. I'm here with Justin from the KTOD. We're at Battlegrounds, a new spot in Natick.
The grind continues. We're everywhere grinding Star Wars Unlimited.
This is hot. It's a new store in Framingham. It's like
Yep.
a place that we've been to many times, but now they have a spot right in between us. This
Yeah,
is a perfect
super
spot to play.
gracious hosts. We were able to record some games and pretty excited about doing more grassroots content.
All right, Justin, we're here. We're going to talk about getting deep on this matchup: Jango Tarkintown versus Sabine Green.
Yeah, we took it to the streets. We went out to Battleground, brand new store in Framingham. They were super gracious hosts.
Yeah, they
And
were.
that's our we want to get out there. We want to get out to card shops and game in person, meet the people who are selling the products, see if we see any of you all in the stores in New England, Massachusetts.
These are our
it was a
first
fun day.
steps into our world tour where we're going to start going to more stores, making more content in more places, meeting up with fans all over the globe. More to more to come in 2025. But you called this our grassroots campaign, and we wanted to record some gameplay. We've flirted with different versions of gameplay in this channel, and we thought, like, instead of just watching games, you can watch any match with just people chatting through it. What we wanted to do was provide not just commentary on what you're going to see on the screen, but actually talking about what should be happening in the matchup and what might or might not be going wrong. Not every game is going to go to plan. I ran some games last night with Jango Tarkintown in this matchup, and our mulligans were terrible, and we had to claw and scrap. Like, there are some games like that, and while we don't need to tell you the play-by-play, you can watch it. We want to dig into what's going on in the match and what you should be looking to do.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to approach playtesting because when you think about like playtesting, if you're not recording, right, you might play the game, you're thinking about the game as it happens, and then afterwards with your group, you're like, what if we do this or what if we sideboard this? And it's all stuff that you learned from the matchup. So that's basically what this is. We can talk about what we learned from the matchup after playing it and share it with you guys. And that's not something you can do if you're talking about the game in real time, right? Like you're just going to be you're going to be sort of distracted by the game that you're playing, so it's almost like you're on like you're texting while like your wife's talking to you or something,
Right.
and you're like sort of giving a response, sure. But this is you're able to give more focused details about the match, and then also sort of like, okay, I lost. What could I have done differently? Was it the draw? Was it just luck, or was it actually something I made? Like, was there a mistake? And we'll be able to deep dive into that.
Yeah, and Justin's just finding this out, but I realize now the way I'm going to edit this, I really can't stop it. So we're just going to have to we're just going to have to roll with it. We're just going to have to roll with it. But this is a best of 3 between Sabine and Jango Tarkintown. Do you have anything else to say before I hit play and we are locked in?
Well, no, I was just saying we recorded this before SCG Columbus. Obviously, we thought that the Jango deck was going to be a player. It was probably way more of a player than we realized. Sabine, we recognize is kind of always a player. I think with set 3 being new and the Sabine list not playing a ton of set 3 cards, I thought that it was a little bit underrepresented. But I think moving forward, these are 2 decks that you're going to see, right? This isn't like an experimental brew versus an experimental brew.
This is a classic.
These are now. Yeah. This is like the new dog versus the old dog, right? Like
this is a meta match. That's what we want to do here at KTOD. Give you the real meta stuff.
Definitely a meta match.
Important question though: is that Sabine showcase in a sleeve? Because it looks like it is not.
So it was in a perfect fit.
Okay.
I've recently purchased these hard cases. So like the larger cases, like when I flipped them over, originally I had like a graded one, and it just felt so clunky. And I don't know. I like playing with cards. I like the feel. It's like I was like when you're a kid and you get like a GI Joe or a Star Wars, and people are like, leave it in the package, it'll be worth more. I'm like, yeah, but
no,
I want to play with it. I want to play with it. So
I
was always a play with your toys type of guy. So Sabine has been completely sleeveless in a few matches that we've done, but not on film yet.
And then, did you get any other showcases in the mail today? Did that happen to come today?
No,
I forgot to check the tracking on that. Okay. All right, ready to go?
Ready to roll.
All right, shuffle up and deal. Here we go. We're shuffling at 1.2 speed. For me, in my opening hand, I'm looking for a Daring Raid or an ISB agent plus an event, and like a 1-drop, like ideally Greedo or a Death Star Stormtrooper, or maybe a Thailand. What about you?
I mean, I've got some heavy hitters, so I'm no longer playing Darksaber. Instead, I'm playing Bright Hope. It's like a real card I want to see in this matchup. And interesting thing that I see here is I actually ended up seeing two Bright Hopes. We'll talk about that in a second. Let you talk about your hand because you're kind of first up on the pocket cam there.
Yeah, I show it. I have a pretty much god hand. I have two no good to me deads. I would like to not have to resource both of them, but the rest of my hand is so gas. P38, triple dark raid, ISB agent, and a one drop. Like I'm gonna keep those four, and I'm gonna put down the no good to me deads. Sadly.
Yeah. So one thing in this matchup that I've noticed is like Battlefield Marine is like the best card because early on they can kill it with their Tarkintown stuff, but they have to have the ISB agent. It doesn't die to anything in space. A-Wing can trade kind of awkwardly. I had an A-Wing. I could have played it in space, but as I was on the play, I think on the draw it's really, really bad, and that's something I sort of recognized after the matchup that A-Wings is very different on the play and the draw. But one of the things I did here was I resourced Bright Hope #2 over Dodonna.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in retrospect, I would have just kept both Bright Hopes and just had you have to slog through all of that. That's really what I think I should have done in retrospect. Like, basically, hey, there's 12 damage. I can add 12, sort of 12 HP to my base by having those. And I kept the Dodonna Bright Hope to sort of curve. Like, maybe the next turn you play, like, Dodonna and, like, a Rebel Assault or something along those lines. But I think in retrospect, I should have just kept both Bright Hopes. It's that good in the match.
Do you think it because I started so heavy ground that kind of propelled you to put the Bright Hope down?
Well, it was my
beforehand.
opening decision.
Gotcha.
So I had two turn one plays. I knew I wanted Battlefield Marine over A-Wing. And then I had Fighters for Freedom was my only 3-drop, so that was clearly getting kept. And then I had 3 4-drops, so I knew I was getting one of those cards down.
Mm-hmm.
I'm heavier on the 4-drops in my latest version. I think it's 7 or 8. So I ended up putting the second Bright Hope instead of the Dodonna. But I think Bright Hope's is so good.
Yeah, so right now we're deciding, like, do I attack your face or do I start to trade? And I think that in retrospect, I wish I traded just because I know, we're going to end up talking about it at some point. But the thing that we've found to be really successful in this matchup is these not like whatever deck is facing Jango, if you can go wide, and obviously Sabine can go very wide, like that's a really great opportunity for you to do that. You're going to be able to get the free kill on my ISV agent. And while I am going to get 3 more damage in, that Fighters for Freedom is still just going to be able to kill my Death Star Stormtrooper. So I know that I drawn another P38, so I'm probably looking to delay the Sabine flip to try and ping her and tap her down. But I also drew a TIE LN, which means I have like a super great delay tactic where I don't have to pass and I can kind of put the pressure on you.
Yeah, this is like it feels almost, I have this tendency to equate everything to the mirror, but this matchup actually feels a lot like the mirror, where you both have these like super aggressive, like powerful avenues, and this is where I think we sort of maybe misplayed this a bit, right? We had the tank opportunity.
Yeah, we could have used the tank to eat something, and I was like kind of thinking that I would have to pay a lot for it. I could have eaten both. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure it's a misplay. I'm thinking about the tank here. Like, it still costs 4 without it. So I did cut some of the decision making here, but I would have had to eat. So it costs -5, so it's 2. I would have had to eat one thing here.
Yeah.
And have the tank out, and I could have like killed the Fighters for Freedom with the 2 and swung in for 6. And yeah, I didn't do that, but I kind of think we decided that it would be way better since I can replay it next turn. Django's coming out next turn. I can kind of give up on space.
Right.
But instead, the other line is like play the 3/4 and then kill the Bright Hope with those 2 ships.
Yeah, and you like get the Bright Hope off the table, and like you still have the punishing one in hand.
Right, and because of the way I can attack, you have to flip your Sabine into the ping from the P38. So I can do that, hit your Sabine, tap it down.
Yeah, I suppose I could have passed there, like just passed.
But then I get the punishing one attack too. So like I think that was one of the reasons I went with the triple dark raid. It gave me sort of the option to play around the sequencing of like getting the extra action in. I thought I drew a TIE LN, but maybe I resourced it.
No, I think it's the next turn, but I think like right here, you'd think like, all right, I have 7 damage on my base. Like you have a Stormtrooper. Like I felt like I kind of was in a reasonable spot. Um, but I did feel like it's just on the back burner. Like it was sort of like when you play Magic and you're playing against mono red, and like they come out with the super aggressive thing, and your life total is dwindling, and you don't have that many units, and you feel like you're turning the corner. But the nice thing about this Django deck is it's able to sort of bounce back. It's got some threats in it that aren't like super resilient, like Ty LN and stuff like that. But it's able to turn the corner pretty quickly.
Yeah,
So,
and
like having some real heavy hitters towards the end.
right, and in looking at this game, like this is definitely not where I want to be. Like obviously I can play a P38 here to kill something, but this is a much better turn for the or I can tap down the Fighters for Freedom here. But now both your guys are dead to the ping. But again, I think like
Right.
this is all the more reason why I could have gone the tank route last turn.
Right. So what I do here is like I have Metal Ceremony to make my Sabine not able to be dead to a ping. Um, and then you could have killed my Sabine, but I would have gotten the damage in with fighters, so it's a tricky one. I've
Yeah, and
got
with no
Poe
health
in
on my
hand
base too.
here. I've got Poe in hand. And I think this is where I make a little bit of a mistake. I play General Dodonna, not recognizing that I really should just slam Poe, because then I can just claim. I was thinking I sort of had it built in my head that I needed to ECL Poe. Like I needed to do that, right?
Hmm.
And the reality of it is I should have just jammed the Poe. It actually would have done a damage. And then I've got Rebel Assault and my Poe attack. Maybe I don't have Rebel Assault this game. I don't have Rebel Assault, but I've got I can open with Poe and kill two things right off the bat, or tap down your Django, or just do 8 damage. And there's a lot, or I can even make you discard a card because you're pretty light
Right.
on your hand. So I really think that just slamming a Poe, like I had it ingrained in my mind, like slamming a Poe against like Boba isn't great because of like cards like Waylay and like all this stuff that Boba oftentimes can do. Um, but I think slamming it would have been better. Now that being said, I'm able to ECL it for a similar situation, and I kill the Django.
Yeah, you kill my Django. You can't kill my ship because it would trigger the Django ability before Django dies.
Right.
Um, so I'm tapping out here. I draw the Ruthless Raider. I'm probably killing your Sabine. No, I'll probably kill your. Yeah, your Sabine is more damage, right?
It does more damage, but then you've got with Dodonna out, Sabine. I don't think you can actually kill.
Oh yeah, right. That's right. It was too many. But I
So
am
this
gonna.
is where like I have three of my best cards out, and you've got a TIE Fighter combo. But going back to the beginning of this match, like if there was another Bright Hope here, we're in this racing situation, and I would have felt a lot better. Like the Dodonna was nice to give my guys like a little bit of a buff and attack, but like I think that second Bright Hope would have really been good.
Yeah, and you're gonna hit me pretty hard here with the Poe, but I just drew Cartel Spacer and Triple Dark Raid, so I'm gonna have an opportunity to do a lot of damage myself, and I have you at 19.
Right.
Oh, actually, that's
And
a
I haven't been able
waylay.
to put enough damage into you yet, to have a card like Rebel Assault would be great, but that would be like a 2 action type of thing. But you're able to get me into, so and you've
Right.
got defensive cards too, so it's just really hard to race this. Like those two TIE fighters ended up being like essentially like by what is all said and done like about 8 damage.
Yep, and I drew way. The other card was Waylay actually. So if you had Rebel Assault, then I bounce Poe. If you hit Poe, I can tap with the Cartel Spacer and save Waylay for anything else tricky that you might have.
Right. So I think I recognize that like okay, I can attack you. Um, I think what do I end up doing here? I think I just like do damage to your base.
Yeah, I think
Sort of
you just do
understand the
8.
writing. I think we sort of understood like what was going to happen. We were
Yeah.
talking during
Also,
the
if I
game. Like
draw
the
a
game was
pump,
essentially
yeah.
over. Because I'm able to get you now in Sabine attacks for 5, but it's still 2 more actions, and you just naturally have me.
Yeah, you were saying
Um,
if you had the Rebel Assault, you would have led with it. So we're talking here,
right,
like, what should I do? Should I waylay? Should I cartel spacer? Or should I just attack? And I think, like, ultimately,
right.
the move was just to
You had a
tap.
couple of cards.
Right, because
that
I'm
matters.
dead to like the heroic sack either way. If I tap
Right.
this, oh no, I wouldn't be right. If you had heroic sack onto Donna, it's one less. I think that's why. And maybe we dial this back and I just attack. I forget. But either way, I think like the thing to think about for this is you weren't able to go wide enough, and I was, and that's what allowed
Right.
me to ultimately push the damage through those sloggy turns. So
And you
yeah,
were the aggressor. I was the one who had to play catch up on a lot of things. I think if I had slammed my Poe, then maybe I could have like heroic, or I'm sorry, ECL'd later for like some value or something along those lines. Not exactly sure how it would have all gone down. I think here's me discussing like I've resourced two cards that I think are very powerful in this matchup, and this is that learning component. I would never resource. Well, never is a strong word, but Rebel Salt incredibly powerful. Um,
right,
and also
in a
Bright
race
Hope
deck. Yeah.
super powerful too.
Yep. So we're going to talk about sideboarding before we get to games 2 and 3. I know for me, I don't have a ton to bring in. I like swoop down because like killing
Yep.
Sabine is like a really, or like even Poe. There's just like it's a really good trick to kill problematic things. And then in general, I just think like playing Bazine, she taps your stuff down, she gets rid of an important card that would otherwise swing the game.
Yeah, and so one of the cards that I really, really like is Daring Raid in this matchup. Out of the board, it's a card I like a lot in these race situations. And you've got a lot of X2s, a lot of lower units. If you think about like that last game, if I could have played a Daring Raid early in the game to kill something, maybe even like a P38, like after all the actions have been taken, so it doesn't actually tap something down the next turn, it just does the damage but doesn't do the tap, is really strong.
Mm-hmm.
And then a card that I recognize, and this again is after the fact, which is like I would keep an A-wing on the play, um, but I don't like it on the draw. It just dies to too many of the 3/2s. So I had, and this also had an 11 card sideboard because I wanted to try things out in this matchup and just like see different things.
Mm-hmm.
So I have the Anakin's Interceptor and the R2 just to have more turn one plays that'll allow me to take out the A-wings. And then the other thing is you saw in this match, like there's not that many things to ambush. So I thought about taking out Wrecker at first. This was sort of my initial line. And then you and I were discussing this, and it was like, hey, wait a second though. Like it really is a race, so heroic sacrifice is like a premium card, right? And if you can ever heroic sacrifice a K2, you're going to be looking really good. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe you just want to get like you almost want a sideboard very similar to the mirror. So now this sort of came out. It was like, okay, wreckers can go away, four causes can go away. Did they all come out? So we were kind of discussing this giant pile of cards on the right side as like things that theoretically could come out. Then Wing Leader became a card that because of the tap um, mechanic of Django, that Wing Leader was like really inefficient because basically it would pump something, but then that something would get tapped, and then Wing Leader itself
Dies to a
was
tap,
pretty
dies to a
vulnerable.
ping.
Dies
Yeah.
to like it dies to a ping. It also dies to like a cartel spacer. It like trades with a 1-drop. Um,
Yeah, I like
and
that
there's a
cut.
weird line of like you can ECL it in some matchups and like feel really good because you like kill something, you like kill a Kylo's tie and also like buff your um
Like Battlefield
Battlefield Marine or
Marine.
something
Yep.
like that, and that's like great. So maybe it's something to think about. But I think overall, really sort of thought about a bunch of different things, talked about it with you. I think moving forward, I would be cutting wing leaders. I'd be cutting A-wings on the draw. I would certainly be on max heroic sacrifices and max daring raids. I do really like daring raids, and I think four cause is something I still need to think a little bit about. You're at a 25-point base, so cards like Wrecker and four cause are just sort of a little bit up in the air.
Yeah, and my big thing was that I didn't really have a sideboard for you. Like Bazines aren't necessarily great against Sabine. Um, I didn't have anything super teched for Sabine, and there were cards that I didn't like into Sabine, like having a whole bunch of X1s that just died a Sabine unit, or like tie phantoms that just get ECL'd by everything in your deck and die
Right.
without trading back. So there's a lot that I don't like about the build that I ran. And like Tata and Alex, they ran like crafties
Right.
in at SCG, so like they kind of improved in that area of like the low drops,
Right.
especially in this matchup. So I think my deck was a little weak as built for week one into Sabine. When I went to my store showdown and published the video of that week, I wasn't expecting a lot of Sabine. I knew that some people would play Sabine, but I felt like most people would want to be doing experimental things. So in retrospect, I would like to have more in this deck that's better against Sabine because it is a slog and you don't trade well into their mid game because Sabine's units are surprisingly beefy for a little aggro deck.
Right, right. And that's what Sabine wants to do, right? Like you think about a card like Daring Raid being good against Sabine, but then you recognize like they don't actually have many cards that die to it. Um, so I remember my hand here being like really red focused, and I had Fighters for Freedom,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, huh, I wonder how good Fighters for Freedom is. And I ended up resourcing it just because of the way the interaction with Tarkintown. And so I had Cassian and Fighters for Freedom, were in a handful completely of red. And I like Sabine in this matchup because he can kill stormtroopers and stuff like that. Or she can kill stormtroopers and stuff like that. So I
Right.
knew I was leading with Sabine. But I ended up resourcing Fighters for Freedom, getting off the ping because if you have an ISB agent, um, you can kill like on your if you don't use your Tarkin Town on my turn one play, you could theoretically kill Cassian. You can kill fighters, but you can't kill Cassian because
Right.
he's got five toughness.
Exactly. And so now that's exactly where we are. Is I have the P38, but I really don't want to play it because then I can't ping
Right.
like I don't have anything to tap down when I'm on the draw and I kill your first play. It's actually something I've been doing less um, in matchups is like just playing something a little underpowered on the second turn because I want to save
Right.
the P38. But that puts me in like a really weird position where my Greedo doesn't actually trade with the Cassian unless I get Miracle flipped, and then I also lost my pinger. I do have an ISP
Right.
agent in my hand right now that I can sort of just like hold all day for Sabine, but
Yeah.
you have the
So here,
K2, yeah.
yeah, and I figured in this situation, like take the three. I get the three damage. You can you can kill the K2, but that does damage. And then I've kind of flipped the script on the aggro a bit, right? Like I'm now attacking your life. I'm getting your guy off the table. This also allows me, unless you play a tapper, which you can, that the Cassian isn't gonna die. He's probably gonna get it at some point, right? Like he's gonna get in for three, maybe six. Um, so and then I've got my Sabine unit too. So I've got kind of three real threats to your one here. And there it is. Like you now could kill the K2, but instead you decide to tap the Cassian, which sort of allows me another avenue here, and then you
Yeah.
end up killing
Yeah, I have the force
the
choke.
Spain with your control. But you can see that the roles are reversed, right? Like from game one to game two, you're a little more in the back foot. I'm the one who's now trying to come at your life total, and sort of be aggressive, like hitting your stuff,
And
keep
that's
your
the
board
benefit
clear, but
of
also pushing
having an
damage.
early ECL. So you
Right.
metal ceremony there. I would have claimed had you not metal ceremonies, but now my ISB agent doesn't actually kill anything.
Right.
Like I can't kill the K2. I can still tap something down, but I figured I might as well start to get some damage down.
And I remember this game I had Daring Raid and I had like two four drops, so I was thinking my turn five was pretty much going to be that. But I've also got Heroic Sacrifice as well, um, which is nice too because that's again damage. And then you start thinking about okay, Daring Raid stops being a defensive card and it might actually be like a burn spell,
Yeah, I had a tough
sort of take an extra
decision
action.
here where I had to either keep a fire spray or have nothing to do this turn because I only have surprise strike and an ISB agent, so I would have had to resource one of those and literally probably the ISB agent, and then just like all I have for the turn is a surprise strike. Already, this is a pretty bad turn, and when I burned force choke to kill your Sabine, I didn't build my board at all the previous turn,
Mhm.
so this is like not exactly where I want to be on the third turn of the game. I definitely wish I was just TDRing and not thinking about anything else, but I didn't have it, and this is like a good example of a game where I drew really light units and can't put up any damage.
Right. And this is so one of the things I did here was I was originally thinking about heroic sacrificing right now just to do 10. It feels great. But then I thought about it, like if I just first action attack for five, are you really gonna like prioritize killing that
No,
K2
you're
and
gonna
take
get to
another
10 it.
three?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna then get the additional 10, and it actually ends up being 11 if Dodonna lives. And I'm really looking at that card as being like, okay, that's gonna be almost my finisher. Heroics, and I have the record too, which is another piece. But actually, like the heroic ends up being more. And it's nice. One thing about Daring Raid here, it's nice to like be able to take an action when you know you can kind of take it. Like I got to sneak that in just 2 damage, knowing that your Django was going to come out, right? Like I knew that was happening.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I was still going to be able to claim, but I just got that little extra damage in.
Yep, and then I don't resource here, which means I didn't draw a 6-drop. I did draw a triple dark raid, but even with 15 HP left, you have so much damage on the board, and then like you said, you have the potential for even more with the events in your hand.
Yeah, so I was getting a little nervous here about like essentially like not being able to close, but I had you in the 2 actions. You went to 20,
Yeah, I
both
should have
those
went to
guys.
21, right? I think
Yeah,
we
I think
missed
I
the
think we said 10, but we didn't recognize it was metal. It
plus
was 7. It was 7 with a heroic, an extra 8, and then 3. So it really should have been 11, which is actually a big difference, right?
yeah,
Because
because now you're
I
dead
mean,
to
I
either
think
hit.
hit and then I can just ping for the win with Sabine ability. So that actually becomes a big
Well,
difference.
if
We
I'm at
missed that one.
21, yeah, that I'm dead to on both of these attacks because they're both 4. So with the even
Right.
without
Well,
the speed.
if you like surprise strike to kill the Dodana, um,
Oh yeah, yeah,
then
yeah. Then
then like
Cassian.
I'm not because you did have the
Yeah.
surprise strike,
You
but
know, we have those tiny metal fab tokens that are +1/+1s, but we have new metal fab tokens in the mail for
I'm excited to get
streaming.
the
Yeah.
streamer. Yeah, B Flow hooked us up. Shout out to Metal Fab.
So you're at 16.
I'm at 16, which is not like a great place, but because I was able to be aggressive early on, I think the rest of this game gets a little funky here because
Yeah.
you do draw the Raider.
But I needed the
Um,
tank because the tank would have tapped both of your guys.
right.
Because I would have been able to eat the P38, but because I didn't, I have no way to stop you, and I can tap
That is
down one of
pretty
your
cool
guys.
with the tank. If you would hit the tank there on a P38, you would have went tap tap and just like lethal me out of nowhere, which is pretty insane.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the reasons why I went up to 2 tanks, but I did draw an out there, but it was it was a 1x out. But the if you watch the games, like if you go back to the SCG VOD and watch the games that Tada played against Phil in the top 4 or top 8, where Phil was on Han Yellow, the tank won him both those games. The
Right.
tank was just absolutely bonkers and cracked it, tapping multiple things. I really, really like the tank, and I'm discovering more ways for it to like take advantage. Looks like you're doing
Yeah.
some sideboarding differently for being on the draw again.
Yeah, so it's not so much the draw. It was more about just like, okay, heroic's great. I don't think I ended up moving them all in because again, this we were still in learning mode at this point. But recognizing like heroic, daring, raid, rebel, assault are really good cards, right? So I actually just want max 4 drops because slamming a 4 drop is pretty good on turn 3, and then just following up with like a 4 and a 1, very similar to how that game went, is also really good. So I was like, you know what, that seems great. Wrecker, yeah, he's good. He can like kill the Django, but um, like it's the same type of thing where like those games might just it might be too late at that point if I like kill a Django and you've got this giant fleet in the skies. So I'd rather just sort of gum up the ground and play like a couple different spells, maybe go wide, but then maybe also have like these really great 4 drops. One thing I think I mentioned this a bit earlier is like if you think about how like Darksaber would have played in all these games, it would have been really bad. ISB agent would have essentially locked down Sabine.
Yeah,
Um,
I think
and
it's really interesting how Tarkintown Django just really changes the whole dynamic of Sabine by existing and being a popular deck.
yeah, so I can't keep this one because there's no turn 1 play, but
Yeah.
it's like Bright Hope, Rebel Assault. It's like a lot of cards I want to see.
It's that 8/4
Heroic,
drop deck
Hate.
really showing up. This is
Yeah, it's
like
my 8/4
one of
drops
the
and
things that I
my
was thinking
only
about today.
12. I think this one after sideboarding, I only have the 11 um, turn 1 plays in this version. So uh, I was like, man, I want to keep this, and it's frustrating too because it's like I could just play a turn 1 and it dies to Tarkintown, but like that's gonna happen in my turn 2 if I keep a no turn 1 play. So I have to do it. I have to like I can't keep a hand without a 1 drop, but or a turn 1 play.
Yeah.
But it's frustrating knowing that that turn 1 play is probably just gonna bite it.
Yeah, I love my hand. I once again have a 1 drop plus ISB agent. I have a P38, I think, in there, and I also think I have the Daring Raid, which means I can like I don't have to burn my ISB agent early, and I resource up Surprise Strike and a TIE Phantom. TIE Phantom, I boarded out 2, so that was my third, which is, like I said, a a ship that I'm not really looking for in this matchup. So I'm pretty happy with my hand, even though I don't love starting with the tile end by any means. I also know that I can just kill whatever you play first, and I love being able to essentially pass by playing a one drop.
Yeah, so I kept two drops. I had Marine and Anakin. I would have played the Marine, but you played the TIE Fighter, so the Anakin ship just kind of blanking that. I kind of wanted to do that right off the bat. You have Tarkintown, but it still felt good just to sort of outstat you. And then I had two copies of Daring Raid, which works out pretty well with the being able to go two drop on the first turn and then two drop and Daring Raid. So even though you got up to a blisteringly fast start, I felt pretty good here because I can go Marine and then kill something right off the bat. And I don't even take any damage from that because I was able to claim. So I like take one, and I'm like, all right, I have a 3/3, you were 1/3. Like I felt like and you'd already burned your Tarkintown, like, and you'd also like you're down a card, right? Because you played a whole bunch of things. Well, I guess I played Daring Raid too, but it felt like I'm sort of drawing to like a more dense threat. And I have the K2 as well. And I'm hoping that you're going to start drawing like, stormtroopers and stuff like that. So I've got Dodonna, K2, and Poe. And this is another thing where I'm in thinking about this matchup more again. Like, I think it's very reasonable to potentially like ECL here, and then just like slam the Poe, and then just like win on the next turn by
Yeah,
claiming. Because like if you just slam the Poe,
my deck doesn't
the
have much
Boba deck
for it.
has to
In
play a
fact,
lot of
like, yeah, I have
actions.
to take the Poe here because I don't really have a way to deal with Poe. But I think like the thing that really slowed me down again, second game in a row, was I didn't have a three drop other than the P38, and the P38 didn't get to do its thing. So I'm
Right.
really not pushing any damage here. And of course, you get to play a four drop plus flip your Sabine, and you still have your previous turn playouts. You've got, your coordinate is turned on, and I've done very little damage to your base.
Yeah, like I looked at this game and I thought about like in retrospect we talked a lot about this when it gets to be really close. Like I wonder if I should have ECL'd there just to keep you off of no ground threats. Because then you like can't tap with Bazine. Um, and you end up like tapping down a whole bunch of stuff here.
Yeah, well, one was
But
frozen with no good to me dead, and then the other one I tap. Yeah,
and I decided to go wide here. I think that was like a mistake not to just jam the K2, but I wanted to go like really wide. I think in retrospect, I probably should have resourced the Cassian, because I could have got the damage in, or just played the K2. Like the way this game is shaping out, it's nice to have all these units. And what I locked in was like, okay, I've got the Donna, I've got all these units, and you can't tap all of them down. But I think like it would have been okay to have um, Cassian get in here this turn and then play for four because I've got the Donna. Um, and then have the ECL on like the K2 for the next turn. And I think my hand is like metal also. So like I resourced the K2 and I think that was like really bad. I think just being able to like ECL at the next turn for five would have been good.
and so I'm doing math on my potential damage and like trying to figure out, can I kill you? I've got 9, 10, 11, 12 there, which only puts you to 20. So unless
Right.
I draw pump pump or pump TDR, I can't win. And you have so much damage. So you've got 5, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 right there. So you have lethal, and I'm 5 short of lethal.
Yeah, it's really interesting because like you have four damage and I have eight, and it feels like the game's like in that like final stages, which it is, um, based on the way the game's gone. But yeah, I really was unhappy with the way that I played the turn. Like resourcing the K2 to be able to go 3 and 2 was just really, really bad. I had that mindset stuff where you do stuff like too frequently. I didn't have the medal ceremony, but I should have just basically given myself the choice to have a ready Cassian or a K2. Like
Yeah,
the
I mean,
Sabine's nice, but like
you still put
everything
me at
gets
lethal
ready.
here. Like that's full lethal. Is it full lethal if you had gone the
Well, the
other
thing is,
route?
the Cassian, like you can tap it, but then I claim and I kill your Django, and
Oh,
then you
with
get
an
no
ECL
taps.
K2.
What any? Yeah, I could ECL K2, or I can just like attack it with anything, and then you have no taps and no damage from it. So like then I'm just like super insulated from like you winning the game, and you can't tap anything down. You're not going to be able to deal with Sabine, the Donna, Battlefield Marine. Like your Bazine won't be able to tap into something.
Hmm.
So like if I just animated the Cassian there with the Donna out, that was like definitely the play.
And I didn't catch my hand. I think I drew a daring raid.
So I just like take myself off of 4 damage for that, right? Like I could have if I had ECL'd earlier just to kill the Bazine, right, and do like 2 extra damage. The K2's out now.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of really good things I could have done.
And K2 is just so insane. He represents so much damage.
And then I'm able to like I'm able to understand like all my units attack for 4. You can't get me to lethal. But what ends up happening here is like I need to draw something, and like you actually I gave you live draws.
Right. Because I can
And
get
there's a
you
whole
close
bunch of
enough
cards.
here.
Right. But I ended up having like, and this is a really weird situation where I'm like, we played this and I'm recognizing like, wait, I haven't used my ECL yet.
Yeah.
And I have Fighters for Freedom, and we ended up recognizing like, okay, well, like Fighters for Freedom ECL, I boarded out the wreckers. So like maybe you just do the fighters so then you can be live to like a heroic. I think we did the math was like lethal because of the
Yeah.
red
If
paint.
yeah, if
So, like,
you
one of
if
those
you
ones.
just ECL'd the Fighters for Freedom and then heroic, it would have been lethal damage.
Right.
So I've
Right.
got 5 in space, and I can put you to 19. Or
Right.
I can tap down the Sabine. I can't even kill her because of Dodonna. Dodonna is like a beating against this list because it just makes everyone
Yeah.
out of reach. And I
And
think
Dodonna's
like
really good, and I think like it plays really well with like the plan you have to like play all these rebels, every unit except for the Anakin's Interceptor's a rebel. And you're able to like at the R2, I'm like digging for stuff. I see the K2 that like, oh man, if I had the ECL, so maybe I like misordered that. Um, no, I recognize that like that wasn't actually going to be that great. Like the K2, I guess would have done 4 hit there, but I'm trying to get you in 2 actions
right. And I
or one
haven't done
action.
anything yet. I still have 2 cards in my hand, so I'm, from my bluff perspective, I'm trying to represent that I could have anything. I can't
Yeah,
see
and
what
this is
they
like
are
one
other
of
than the
the.
daring raid.
This is one of those. This is why like this sort of grassroots recap coverage is really good because like I don't think either of us necessarily navigated this game. I think I did the worst right here, like turns 4 and 5, really just kind of like tripping over myself. And this is what you want to do if you want to get better as a player, right? This was early on,
Yeah, I
like
mean I'm catching things
seeing
too.
things
Yep.
like you look at Steph Curry says in his master class about how to shoot a basketball. He's like record yourself shooting the basketball, and then you'll see like your elbows out and like your hands not under the ball and like
Yep.
stuff like that. And he's got these, you're stiff, but your arms going like you got this little like catch release. I'm looking at this. I'm like, boy, like this is bad. But here's the thing: it's not an embarrassment thing. You want to look at your mistakes. You want to grow, and you
Right.
want to say like, all right, like Cassian, I need to use him to put in damage. Like if I do that, what happens? I keep my ECL for like a K2. What happens? I resource to K2 in this matchup with like an open ECL. Like that should probably never happen, right?
Yeah, for me, I know I'm looking at like I was pointing at the Battlefield Marine. I really should just have killed the Battlefield Marine last turn with Jango. It would have opened him up to getting ECL'd, but he didn't do enough this turn, and like I took way too much damage from the Battlefield Marine.
Right. Yeah, because he was like a 4-2, right? So now you're doing math and you're like, do I kill Battlefield Marine or do I do damage to your base? Because if you don't draw the pump, then you can kill in like a surprise strike or I think it was a breaking. I think surprise strike was lethal no matter what, but breaking
Breaking
in
in
now
became
becomes
lethal. Yeah,
yeah, because I'm at it's 21.
yeah, but you draw the Rebel Assault and the
I
Heroic
drew and the
Sacrifice.
heroic, so it doesn't matter, and you ended up drawing it too. But I think there's a lot of really good learning here, a lot of really good like importance on like what matters. You can also see like Bright Hope would have been really. I guess it wouldn't have been good.
I still could have drawn the Breaking In for
Breaking
lethal
in
there.
wouldn't have done it, but like
Yeah,
a Bright Hope would have actually been like kind of interesting to see.
yeah, it would have been
Um,
highly dramatic. That's for sure.
But yeah, like a really interesting match. One you're going to see if you're playing either of these games, and I think we see like some of the power cards in both matchups, right? Like
Yeah,
Daring
and
Raid is really interesting, and like just
also
like building your board is
one
really
of the classic
powerful.
things that we beat the drum on in the Sabine thread in the Discord, which is like you got to start doing the math 3 turns out. Like you really have to start thinking about that. I think like I really should have tried to kill a couple more things had I slowed down and do the math myself on from my angle. But that's the end of the video. Did you have anything else you wanted to mention before we?
No, I mean like, we're excited. I'm excited to get the next sequence. I'm excited. It was fun to play in person. We got the cool mats. You've been the mat collector.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a little bit of the starting to start my like, showcase collection. So like,
Yeah, I got you the Bad Batch
FFG
mat for
does
that
a
weekend because you had opened a Rex showcase and you and your boys have been
yeah.
watching Bad Batch. So I want to give you the Bad Batch mat for
Yeah,
the
the
week so
Bad
you could
Batch
show it to
one's
the boys in the
cool.
video.
I don't have the mat collection. You have got my. You're right here. I've got my
Nice,
finalizer
finalized.
mat. Gen Con with Sabine. Um, but yeah, I think it's exciting to learn from this. That's one thing we want to put out content where you can learn from the games. And then I think the exciting thing about this is like, what do you do? Like, I'm actually like thinking about this continuing from this, right? This isn't like the end. It's like, all right, Django's
Yeah.
out now.
How do
Like,
we
I
apply?
recently changed. Like, I moved to two Dodana's main off of one. Originally, I was like two and two, and then it was three Bright Hopes and one Dodana. And then at a certain point, I was like, you know what? I don't mind like a ton of four drops. Like it's eight right now, and that seems a little hefty, but I don't have Dark Saber, and like they're actually like really effective units, and they do a lot of things in different matchups. Like Dodana is really good against takedown. He gets takedown, but then Sabine is free and clear. So
Yeah.
one of my favorite cards is Dodana.
Yeah, he's
Excited
great.
to get that card in. Heroic Sacrifice. Like these cards, like seeing like when you want them, these race situations, like these cards will let you get an action, like an extra action. It's not just like strictly stats, but it's like this will let me win one action earlier. Um, are really cool. And then you think about like a card like a Wrecker. Um, like when it's so incredibly powerful in Sabine, but like sometimes maybe you do board it out, and
Hmm.
like when the right time to do that is.
Right. Cool. All right. Well, thanks for doing this, and we'll check you next time with our next iteration of the matchup deep dive.
See ya on the felt.